Good morning, dear shareholders, ladies and gentlemen. It is for me an honor to address you again. I would like to welcome you to this annual general meeting of shareholders on behalf of the board and my own. And I'd like to thank you for your presence here and the trust you have deposited in Indra. I would also like to welcome all the shareholders who attended by telematic means, and to thank those who are unable to attend have granted their proxy or exercised their voting rights by remote means. For Indra, the participation of its shareholders in the meeting is very important, and it is very gratifying to see the interest shown in participating in this event. As has been the case since the 2020 financial year, the possibility of attending the meeting telematically has also been made available, as detailed in the announcement of the call. I am joined at the table by the Chief Executive Officer, Mr. De los Mossos, and the Secretary of the Board, Mrs. Sala. At the table on my right sits the Chairman of the Audit and Compliance Committee, Vice Chairman of the Board and Coordinating Independent Director, Mrs. Arce, and the Chairman of the Sustainability Committee, Mrs. Amatriain. At the table to my left sits the Executive Director, Mr. Abril, and the Chairwoman of the Appointments Committee, Amatriain. The other of directors, as well as the company's senior management, are seated in the front rows of this room. By resolution of the Board of Directors, the Notary in Public, Gerardo von Wichmann Rovira, here present, has been requested to draw up the notarial minutes of the meetings, so that, in accordance with the provisions of Article 203.2 of the Capital Companies Act, it will not be necessary to submit the approval of the minutes to this meeting at the end of the session. I now give the floor to the Secretary. Thank you, Mr. President. Good morning. The Board of Directors having been constituted with the members mentioned by the Chairman, I will now inform you of the following points. The meeting has been duly convened through the publication of the required notice of the company's website and on the website of the CNMV on May 26, 2023, as well as in the ABC newspaper on May 27, 2023. It is stated for the record that no request for publication of a supplement to the notice of meeting has been received by the company, nor have any alternative proposals for resolution been submitted on the items already included in the agenda. Nor have any requests for information or clarifications have been received from shareholders prior to the meeting. Please be advised that from the date of the call to the meeting until today, the company has continuously made available on its corporate website all the information provided for in Article 518 of the Capital Companies Act. With regard to the full text of the proposed resolution, I hereby inform you that they have been formulated differentiating those matters that are substantially independent, and the notary has been provided with a full text of all of them. In addition, an electronic shareholders forum has been set up on the company's website, to which both shareholders and voluntary associations of shareholders constituted and registered in the special register set up for this purpose with the CNMV have been able to have access. The data on the capital attending the AGM so far are as follows. The 110 shareholders present, accounting for 0.343% of the capital. By proxy, 225 shareholders, accounting for 75.823% of the shares. Overall, as we can see on the screen, we have 335 shareholders representing 134,550,315 shares, accounting for 76.166% of the company capital. Of all the shares mentioned, the 34% are shares that are represented by the board. Any of its members we are finalizing the number of cards by telematic means, so before voting on the resolutions, that definitive attendance quorum will be read out. Thank you very much, Madam Secretary. After listening to the provisional data of attendance, I declare provisionally constituted this general meeting on second call. I now give the floor to a notary. Are there any reservations or objections to the declarations regarding the number of shareholders attending or the capital present? I would like to remind shareholders attending telematically that there is a link in the computer application to send any reservations or objections they wish to express to this notary. I now give the floor to Mr. President. I now give the floor to the Secretary to explain the procedure to be followed in relation to shareholders' interventions. If any shareholder present in the room wishes to speak, to request information or clarifications in relation to the items on the agenda or on the public information provided to the CNMV since the date of the last general meeting, or on the auditor's report, or to make proposals for resolutions outside of the agenda, he must communicate this to one of the hostesses present in the room, who will accompany him or her to the speaking table. Those wishing to do so may do it from this point onwards. I would also like to ask shareholders who wish to speak to anticipate in the documents provided them the questions they wish to raise, in order to expedite the development of the round of interventions and in the meeting itself. Likewise, if you wish your intervention to be recorded verbatim in the minutes, you must submit it in writing so that the notary public can check it against your intervention. Shareholders who have given notice of their intention to speak shall do so when the chairman opens the floor. To do so, when they are called from the table, the shareholder must go to one of the microphones set up in the central aisles of the room. After all the shareholders have spoken, replies will be made, if necessary, from the table or by whomever the chairman indicates. As regards shareholders attending telematically, as detailed in the notice of call, they have been able to send their intervention or question through the computer application up to the moment when the chairman has provisionally declared the meeting to be validly constituted, indicating, where appropriate, whether they wish their intervention to be recorded in the minutes of the meeting. In accordance with the provisions of the notice of call, the intervention sent by the telematic attendees shall be answered during the course of the meeting or in writing within 7 days following the holding of the General Assembly. This will be followed by speeches by the chairman and the chief executive officer. Good morning, ladies and gentlemen, dear shareholders. Welcome to this annual general meeting of Indra. It's an honor for me to speak to you one more time as a president of the company. I would like to thank you for your attendance. 2022 has been a highly relevant year for Indra. The company has faced challenges and made necessary changes that have placed the company in the path of growth and stability. So we are facing a new era with new leadership, with new shareholders and board members who are a true reflection of the future vision for the company. I would like to congratulate and welcome José Vicente Los Mozos as new CEO of Indra. It is a privilege for Indra to have a CEO with his experience and its great personality. We will work to drive a new company that is more focused on its strategic businesses for the future and technological opportunities provided by the present times. I would also like to mention the 3 new members of the board who will be proposed today: Elena Garcia Armada, María Ángeles Sari Martín, and Pablo Jiménez de Parga. Strategically, our playing field is in the context of the geopolitical context. It is an interesting time. We, in the world, we are combining 2 main axes of change. One caused by the instability of the conflict in Ukraine, and the other by the acceleration in technology. And changes in the global geostrategy are affecting us in full. These changes have not arisen out of nowhere. Both changes were present for a long time, but have been intensified and increased. The strategic autonomy is a first-level priority for the European Union and its member states. The EU is decided to go towards greater autonomy with a unanimity that can be perceived in Europe and behind this idea. This is crucial to ensure autonomy and to have technological autonomy. As technology becomes more sophisticated and complex, dependence from third parties or third countries increases. At present, Spain and the EU are dependent from third countries in many critical capacities for our sovereignty, such as cloud, semiconductors, or AI. Without knowledge and full control of technologies, the country will depend from third parties for its use. That's why the strategic compass of the EU aims at reinforcing the industrial technological base of European defense and driving innovation in the sector. We are in a scenario of acceleration for defense. Geostrategy indicates that technology gives the how and with whom. For democracies such as ours, it's not a matter of investing more, but investing wisely and on key technologies. We must not forget that innovation in defense has huge repercussions in the civil environment because a greater part of developed technology have dual use. The origin of the investing in R&D of countries is military. However, that is then transferred to civil uses. This has happened with a radar, GPS, tactile screens, 4x4s, epidural injections, to name a few. And this is still the case with satellite communications or AI. In technological changes, we see Europe is one generation behind the US or China. For this reason, it is increasingly necessary to enhance cooperation between European companies. Only in this way we will be able to develop the complex technologies required by the sector. As a European Union, we must go towards a single concept of defense in the same way that we have to share our principles. The countries that have the most mature defense systems make a long-term strategic planning. In this playing field and in this technological enablement, Spain has to be present, and Indra, of course, will have a leading role in that. For this, we need greater size and keep our approach on systems such as in areas of greater growth. In our new strategy, we aim to become a full system player. In defense, we have seen a transformational change, and we are fully aware that the information technologies are a central part of our profits and benefits, and therefore of our future. We also Through our Minsait IT Technologies subsidiary, we wish to be the leaders for digital transformation for our clients due to the dual-use technologies that we are developing. In this line, the logical evolution for Minsait will be to acquire greater operational autonomy, delve deeper in the business mix areas, to different areas such as robotics and cloud migration, to develop in the platforms to reuse software and the use of a technological base, accelerating the delivery of solutions, achieving greater standardization, and thus to continue the transformation of services to products. By attracting technological talent and retaining the best professionals who choose to develop their career with us. And delve deeper in our presence in strategic markets. In the traffic management business, Indra has achieved 2 international contracts, and we expect to be #1 very soon. And we are taking important inorganic growth steps, such as the acquisition of a U.S. company. And this is very important for our participation in air traffic control. And we are also focusing campaigns on the areas of greater growth, such as Asia Pacific and Europe. We have our strategies focused on data management to measure meteorology and traffic impact, and the cloud scalable architectures based on services and methodologies for the ongoing deployment of developments. We're increasing the lead to market. In mobility, the expectations of business growth are very favorable, with very good prospects for business in the UK, Ireland, and the United States, consolidating the company as a global player in intelligent mobility.
In terms of operators, traction by disruptive technologies show new paradigms, such as mobility as a service, satellite tolls, intelligence mobility, or critical systems for new generation mobility paradigms in which Indra is well positioned to be able to find a cross-cutting traction. I would also like to mention that I consider everything linked to talent one of our main strategic challenges. Since I was appointed, I have been able to see the extraordinary quality of many people who are part of Indra. This is the moment to offer them the best professional long-term project through a growth strategy that will allow them to fully develop their potential. Next, we will check what will happen in fiscal year 2022, and now I would like to assess the results of the group in 2022, and I will finish with some thoughts on the strategic path that we are going to follow as a company. It's an honor to be able to say that in 2022, financial results have been extraordinary for Indra. We have been able to hit all-time records in contracts, earnings, and EBIT. The main part of our P&L grew double-digit in 2022. As you can see, the results are excellent. They have allowed us to increase earnings per share by 20%. Once again, it's important for us to see that the performance in 2022 has been outstanding. Our portfolio by the end of the year was at 6.309 billion euros, with a growth of 16% compared to 2021. The portfolio of transportation and defense areas went up to 478 million, an increase by over 10%, and Minsait reached 1.722 billion, with a growth of 8%. The ratio of portfolio on sales was at 1.64 times by the end of 2022 compared to 1.61 in 2021. These data show an excellent commercial dynamic and a forecast that allow us to be optimistic. A hiring increase in 2022 by 26% in a local currency, 29% in reporting. In transportation and defense, it grew by 23% in local currency, pushed basically by the phase 1B of the FCAS project that accounts for around 600 million. And that reinforces the highly strategic profile of this project. A fact that the CEO will mention afterwards. We'd also like to highlight new air traffic contracts in Spain, Germany, Norway, India, and Australia. Also, contracts in India grew by 16% with a solid growth in all its verticals. We'd like to highlight the growth of public administrations and health with a growth of 35% in local currency. Basically, given the project of the elections in Angola, earnings increased by 12% in local currency, and they reached 3.851 billion euros. We'd like to highlight that income from Minsait increased by 15% in local currency with a strong growth in all its verticals, showing the excellent performance of 2022 in our IT business. And the exchange rate provided 67 million to our income in 2022, especially given the growth of Latin American currencies. If we exclude the inorganic growth of acquisitions, and exchange rate increased by 10% in 2022. These organic growth, double-digit organic growth, shows clearly the solid basis of our business. The digital business at Indra reached 688 million euros, which is a growth of 18% and accounts for 27% of Minsait. The digital solutions, our own and from third parties, account for 57% of Minsait, and they clearly show the evolution of our sales mix. EBITDA provided in 2022 was 400 million, which shows a growth of 15%, which is the equivalent of EBIT margin of 10.4%. EBIT grew by 18%. The EBIT margin grew to 7.8% compared to 7.5% in 2021. Net result of 2022 was 172 million euros compared to 143 in 2021, which shows a growth of 20%. Free cash flow was 653 million, which is the second best figure in history after the 289 million we reached in 2021. This excellent behavior of cash flow generation allowed us to reduce our net debt by to almost zero. Net debt by the end of the fiscal year was at 43 million, which is a ratio of 0.1 times our EBIT compared to 0.8 we had in 2021. As a whole, these results and the strength of our financial situation allows us to improve the retribution to our shareholders. And in this sense, we'd like to mention the payout of a dividend of 0.25 euros per share. This is going to be paid. That's going to be paid out in July compared to the previous dividend last year, which was 0.15%, or 0.15 cents per share. I would also like to highlight the great performance of the group in terms of ESG. This year, we were for second year in a row the most sustainable company in the sector and amongst the 1% most sustainable companies in the world, according to the Sustainability Yearbook 2023, done by Standard & Poor's Global. Indra has also been certified as best practice by the CDP Index of Climate Change that shows us as one of the companies with the best environmental practices. As you can see, 2022 has been an outstanding year. We have been able to have a double-digit growth. We have improved profitability of the two main areas in the company as a consequence of both our growth and our efficiency and improvement plans. And this improvement in profitability is even more valuable if we take into account the environment of high inflation in wages in our markets. As a result, we have been able to meet the objectives that we have with our shareholders for 2022, objectives that we reviewed and increased mid-year. Despite that fact, we have been able to overcome them. We must highlight that this is the last year of our strategic plan, 2021-2023, and I'm happy to say that we are meeting the objectives that we set in that plan, both from a financial perspective and from a strategic perspective. We were able to confirm our EBIT and cash flow generation that was committed for 2023. As the CEO will detail afterwards, the company will soon start the work necessary to define a new strategic plan for this new era, and we are sure that it will even go beyond the success of the cycle that we're finishing now. And according with the 13th recommendation of the Code of Good Governance of Public Companies, I would like to mention the most relevant aspects in corporate governance and also the changes that taken place since the previous extraordinary general shareholders meeting. The most important ones are the board of directors after the previous general shareholders meetings, and given an ex-independent director ceased in her position, we carried out the necessary actions to be able to keep on doing and following up the good governance practices within the board of directors. Within these actions, as informed in the general shareholders meeting that was held in October, the board of directors took into account the SEPI on the appointment of a new director that will represent their interest in the board, given that the participation in the capital was increased after it was approved by the government. So that's why we held an extraordinary general shareholders meetings in October 2022, and we agreed that we're going to set the number of directors at 14, with the appointment of 6 new independent directors. 4 of them are going to be women. The appointment of a third proprietary director to represent the interest of SEPI, and also the modification of Article 24 of the Articles of Incorporation. And in March the 6th, the board of directors approved to start with Ignacio Mataix, the former CEO, his succession process for that position that ended in May the 18th with the appointment as new CEO of Mr. José Vicente de los Mozos. The latest changes in the board of directors have been caused by what happened in the by the cease in his position of Axel Arendt, and then in May the 23rd, and the intentions of and the appointment of Amber by a proprietary director to represent their interests in accordance with the present legislation. As a consequence, the board of directors requests and presents for the approval to have in the board at least 50% of independent directors to ratify and re-elect Mr. de los Mozos, the appointment of 2 new independent directors, and the appointment of 1 proprietary director to represent the interest of Amber. If these proposals are approved, the council will now have 16 directors. Half of them will keep on being independent, and additionally, we would increase the number of our female directors that will now be 35.7% in the board of directors. Next, I would also like to inform you on the good governance compliance in 2022, and as you can see in the corporate governance report, our compliance is very high. Only 3 out of 64 recommendations in the code that Indra are partially non-compliant with, or non-compliant. As we can see in the manual, Indra partially complies with the recommendation, the 15th recommendation of the Good Governance Code on the percentage of women in the board of directors, although, as I mentioned, if the proposals are approved to appoint new independent directors, we would be very close to the objective that's recommended, which is 40%. And the 52nd recommendation of the Code of Good Governance, given that strategy is not presided by independent director. Indra is not compliant with recommendation 48 on having two separate committees for retributions, appointments, and good governance, given that we considered it was not appropriate to have that separation. So we are starting a new stage on a very solid base that invites us to be optimistic. We have extraordinary results, corporate governance model that's been renewed, a solid P&L, and an extraordinary group of professionals. We are truly in a moment of transformation in many of the key businesses at Indra. The evolution of technology and the geostrategic context show us a future full of opportunities for a company like Indra that's willing and that we're willing to take. This new environment is essential, and in this new environment it is essential to be able to adapt to bigger projects, providing economies of scale and fostering the cooperation with the European companies. We should be able to integrate effectively disruptive technologies as diverse as new materials, autonomous platforms, cognitive algorithms, hyperconnectivity, artificial intelligence, optic communications, quantum computing. So our idea is for Indra to become the global leader in technology and defense, to build an ecosystem of collaboration with companies of all kinds, to foster and project the Spanish technology industry into the future. Before I give the floor to our CEO, José Vicente de los Mozos, I would like to thank on behalf of the board and my own Mr. Ignacio Mataix for his career in the company. First, as an executive chief in charge of transportation and defense, and as a CEO till May the 18th. Thank you for your trust to start this new phase.
Tiene la palabra el consejero.
I now give the floor to the CEO, Mr. José Vicente de los Mozos. Ladies and gentlemen, shareholders, good morning. It is for me an honor to address you for the first time in this AGM of Indra. I would like to start thanking the President and all the members of the board for their support in my appointment as a CEO of India. The ratification of will be submitted to your votes today. Now I will make an assessment of the state of the company after making a full investment in the past 6 weeks. I will also share the challenges and priorities that I will address in this new stage. And I will finish sharing the path I will begin in the next few weeks if I am ratified. Indra has strategic capabilities for Spain, as well as a unique group of assets and financial situation. We are present in markets with clear fundamentals of long-term growth and with a very favorable circumstances such as defense, air traffic and mobility. We also have digital capabilities through Minsight that are change factors in many value chains in the economy. This company has best practices that have not been adequately made the best use of. We are a knowledge-intensive company where talent is key. However, we are in a situation of ferocious competence with the main players of the industry for capturing and retaining professionals with high qualification and specialization. In our visits to the work centers, I have been able to see the passion of our professionals, their skills, the great commitment they have shown throughout these past years. We have achieved excellent results in 2022, as mentioned by the President. And we continue with a growth path in 2023. Our historical portfolio closed with a multiple of 1.6 times sales. So this allows us to implement transformational changes in the company. And our profitability of 7.8 has also been excellent, being one of the best in the market of aerospace and defense. In addition, our debt has gone down to 43 million euro, which is 10% of the net debt of EBITDA. However, we must address a number of challenges due to a roadmap based on investment, which has impacted the growth of the company. These measures were necessary, but now we initiate a new stage. Indra must become the reference multinational of Spain in defense and technology, updating our strategy towards becoming a company based on the excellence of our products and with a profitable growth. We need to grow in order to compete in Europe with companies such as Leonardo or Thales in defense that have a larger scale and who have a control of the value chain which is much higher than ours. We must grow playing our role as prime, as was the case with companies in reorganization processes of the industry in their countries. We must do this on segments with higher added value, involving a broad portfolio with a more rational and a simple portfolio focused on disruptive technologies. A new portfolio with a dual technology between civilian and military technologies, as well as vanguard and sustainable design processes. We need to improve our performance, investing in capabilities to ensure the delivery of our programs in quality and term. We must accommodate to a new competitive environment where we must become a reference company in our products. Finally, we must continue to develop our excellence in the working style For this, we must act on the 4 priorities of Indra, the 4 T's, that is, traction, transformation, talent, and technology. We have the capabilities to drive the national defense and technology system as prime from a country project and with a collaborative approach with the entire value chain. And Spain has notable and incredible technological fabric, but it is subscale regarding Europe. Indra must lead its integration through different mechanisms, not only the acquisitions, but establishing agreements with other companies to access the international environment, with starting in Europe and also in the United States through acquisitions such as Selex and the US. We also need to transform our company model to respond to this new paradigm. This transformation must come through 2 levers: adaptation of a company structure to become a prime in an ecosystem, as well as the simplification and evolution of our internal operations to provide responses to our clients in good quality, cost, and term. We also want to become excellent and competitive in what we do. To this end, we need the best national and international talent in the industry, whose main asset is people. We must be able to attract as well as to retain the best professionals and create a differentiated labor working environment. We must also invest more in technology in a sustainable manner, focused on clients. We are a reference in some of our products. We have captured a large proportion of defense European funds. 14 initiatives have been approved by the EU. But technology moves forward, and in recent years we were unable to maintain the pace. We must define and execute a long-term roadmap, investing in internal and external capabilities that will respond to the needs of our clients. We have taken a number of short-term actions, such as my appointment as Executive Director of the ETCAS program, due to the transforming effect for the rest of the company of this program. However, I state that the next few weeks, if I'm ratified today, I will carry out a number of specific actions. We will launch a management committee based on a new model structured around 4 businesses, where Minsait will preserve its autonomy and supporting areas in the long term for the company. We will prepare a new 24-26 strategic plan that will define the new roadmap of the company. We need to carry out a revolution towards the future. We will also start the Indra 4.0 project in order to reposition the company as the reference digital company in all operational processes. We will share the planning of the company for the next few months in the presentation of results of the first half with analysts and investors. And lastly, we will sign the first agreements with companies in that sector that will contribute to redefining the current panorama around this new country project. Dear shareholders, I would like to finish by sharing the high-grade degree of motivation and commitment to the future of Indra, express my gratitude to lead this great company should I be ratified at this meeting. Thank you very much.
continuación se abrirá el...
Next, we will open the floor. In this room, I'd like to give the floor to Madam Secretary so she can open the floor to the shareholders' interventions. Before I open the floor, I would like to remind shareholders attending this meeting electronically that they have been able to cast their vote on the proposed resolutions on the agenda from the moment they logged on to the application, and they will be able to do so until the end of the speaking time in this room. I would like to remind you that in the event that the shareholder or his representative does not indicate the direction of his vote through the computer application, it will be understood in any case that they vote in favor of the resolutions proposed by the Board of Directors in each of the items of the agenda. With regards to the speaking time, in order to ensure a smooth running of the meeting, we will like to ask shareholders to keep their interventions as brief as possible and to limit their interventions to 5 minutes. I'll now give the floor to Ms. Miren Koldovica Velasco Vázquez. Good morning. My name is Miren Koldovica Velasco Vázquez, and I am here representative in the Foundation Finanzas Éticas and other 30 entities that are for the environmental protection, anti-racism, and for the rights of migrants, or at a national level within the campaign Desarmando Indra. Getting rid of weapons. We also count on the net of shareholders for change and the International for the Resistance Against War. In this shareholders meeting, they pay out dividend of war and the violence by the violence of migration flows in our borders. Shareholders have to be aware of it, and unlikely the sustainability report that's subject for approval in item 2 in the agenda doesn't show the minimum transparency standards to be approved. We'd like to ask our shareholders to reflect on the direction of the board and the board of directors to provide the necessary explanations, at least in the aspects I will mention next, because Indra is attended with blood, because their earnings come from being part of the business of war and the militarization of borders. While inflation impoverishes homes all around the world, Indra closed the first quarter of 2023 with benefits that are above the first quarter last year. We'd like to highlight the defense area, in which contracts have grown by 37%. Partly given the start of Phase 1B of FCAS, the next generation weapon system. This system of systems is not only trying to replace the fighters that are being used now, but include a combat system that includes, besides a new generation fighter, unmanned platforms and other systems that are not free of issues. And also the control for Phase 1B positions Indra as one of the main technological leaders of European defense. On the war in the Ukraine, more deaths, more military expenses, and more benefits. In the midst of an increase in defense expenses around the world, companies like Indra get important benefits from it. Spain is in the moment, in the past 40 years, in which military expenses have increased the most. In terms of defense, well, defense expenses account for, or have grown by 23% more compared to 2022. And this is the line in the budget with the largest growth. Indra has benefited indirectly of the war situation in the Ukraine that has caused a world increase in military expenses. The company was a candidate for a contract with the Ministry of Defense to get the Leopard tanks operation system ready that would then be sent to the Ukraine. I would like to claim that adding fire in a wildfire is not going to reduce damage, but in fact it's going to increase damage. This is the right space to inform your shareholders about the first question we'd like to ask. Which part of 2022 benefits come from this armed conflict? Why do you not include such a relevant information for the shareholders in your sustainability report on Indra and its benefits based on forced displacement? Besides getting enriched by the business of weapons, Indra is one of the most important businesses in Spain. The militarization of borders, a phenomenon that has an impact in the lives, bodies, and rights of displaced, unfortunately displaced people. And people who are trying to run away from the wars that Indra collaborates with. Indra, with the other three companies of the border militarization companies, Atos, Eolin, and Thales, received 56 contracts since 2019 to militarize the south border in Spain through the management of the centers for migrants, to reinforce the exterior surveillance system, to protect the borders in Ceuta and Melilla, and to do the maintenance of the Benazar Center in Melilla. While this place of people reached all-time highs with over 100 million displaced people, we also, from Indra, deepen these wars in our borders. Technology and the benefits of Indra grow through the border management of the Spanish state with the sensors of the fences in Ceuta and Melilla, repairing patrols and ships of the Guardia Civil and maritime surveillance, with the integrated surveillance systems managed by the Guardia Civil. CIVE had an expense of over 236.8 million euros between 2008 and 2018, and that money has gone to companies like Indra, amongst others. And now this is the second question. Can you deny that any of these contracts? Why do you omit this kind of information while in the sustainability report submitted to approval you talk about the contribution to the Sustainable Development Goals? Do you believe that you only have a duty to inform on the positive impacts of your corporate work in case of the war in Yemen? Although it seems that they are negotiating a peace agreement in Yemen. In 2019, in the midst of the war, Indra provided a simulator for pilots for the 330 MR. This model has been exported to Saudi Arabia by France. Since March 2015, several international agencies from civil society and NGOs have documented the bombings against Yemen, the defense materials from European origin are an important part of the available materials for the air forces of the Arab Emirates and Saudi Arabia. These materials include fighter planes as well as the Eurofighter fighter plane, and also the fueling plane A330 MRTT, whose training system Indra is exporting to other countries. So has Indra contributed to the production of these combat planes and simulators that were used in the war in Yemen? Sorry, if you could wrap up. Thank you. What do you report? The investment of 1.3 million euros in social actions, 5,000 hours of volunteering work, and you do not include this information. And last, we like to call on the shareholders, workers, the Spanish government, and all the citizens. Besides all the aspects we are claiming here today in this context of war that we are living in the world, this doctrine of coercion, militarism, and war are not only avoiding, but they're actually worsening the situation. It's important to mention that we must increase the resources to protect life and technologies that guarantee and the protection of human rights. And in any case, should dividends be paid out to shareholders when these benefits come from the war, the violence, and the militarization of borders? That's why we will ask this company not to collaborate in the production, investment, and weapon supply that are destructing life and that are against human rights. We would like to appeal to the conscience of the workers of the company so they stop contributing to the war, to the business war, and the criminalization of borders. We would like to request to put a stop of gray areas in European policy, around security, and we'd like to ask the Spanish state, as the main shareholder of Indra, to request that this company complies with human rights, avoiding the use or the creation of technology that could be used to breach human rights. We'd like to invite you to put a stop to projects that contribute to the violation of human rights, because war is a crime against humanity and the life in the planet. The war starts here. Let's stop it here in Indra as well. By stopping weapons in Indra, we gain in life. Thank you. No more interventions. So I'd like to answer. As we mentioned in previous meetings, Indra is providing consultancy and technology services for different sectors, amongst which we have the defense sector, which is a vital part of security. And security is the basis for democracy, companies, family, and NGOs. We have been able to see it in the Russian invasion of the Ukraine. At Indra, we feel proud, very proud of what we do. Indra is part of a diverse ecosystem of organizations that operate in the defense sector that contribute to the protection of life and the way of life of European citizens. In its operations, Indra complies clearly with the legal framework and the regulations that regulate the export of dual-use systems, and as the ethic code stipulates, Indra provides the armed forces with the capabilities they need to fulfill the mission by making a vital contribution to peace, international cooperation, economic and social development, by implementing the principle of respect and protection of human rights according to the United Nations principles of human rights, as can be seen in the human rights principles of the group, of the company. It's important to mention that in the sustainability report of the company provides transparent information on all the requests that are received by the direct channel, amongst which we can find the ones on human rights, and there have been no claims on human rights until today. After the shareholder comments, I'd like to inform that to remind the shareholders that the deadline for casting the vote on the resolutions, including the agenda through the telematic assistance application, is now closed. I will give the floor now to the Secretary to report on the final quorum. I would like to inform you that the counting of the cards and attendees by telematic means has been completed, and that the final quorum of the capital attending the meeting is as follows. 114 shareholders are present that account for 618,888 shares that account for 0.350% of our capital. 226 shareholders represented by proxy that account for 133,944,735 shares that account for 75.823% of our capital. And total present or by proxy, we have 340 shareholders attending the meeting that account for 134,563,623 shares that account for 76.173% of the capital of the company.
Muchas gracias, señora secretaria.
Thank you very much, the Secretary. This closes the list of attendees as reported, and I ratify the valid constitution on second call of this General Shareholders meeting, which may deliberate and adopt resolutions on all the points included in the agenda. I now give the floor to the notary. I repeat the question as to whether there are any reservations or objections to the declarations regarding the number of shareholders attending or capital present. I would like to remind the shareholders who attend telematically that there is a link in the application for this purpose, or to send any reservation or objections they wish to express to this notary. I give the floor to the Secretary. I now give the floor to the Secretary to report on the voting procedure. Thank you, Mr. President. I hereby inform the shareholders that in accordance with the proxy procedure approved by the Board of Directors and detailed in the announcement of the call of this general meeting, the proxies that have been received without a nominative expression of the person in favor of whom the proxy is granted or have been conferred generically in favor of the Board of Directors have been deemed to have been granted in favor of the Secretary of the meeting, who is the Secretary of the Board. Furthermore, in accordance with the provisions of the Articles of Association and as expressly stated in the Notice of Call, at this general meeting the company has provided the necessary means for shareholders to exercise their voting rights or to grant proxies by remote means of communication, which have been duly counted for the purposes of the aforementioned quorum of attendance. In the event that the shareholder or his proxy has not indicated the direction of his vote with respect to the proposed resolutions included in the agenda, it is understood that he or she votes in favor of those formulated by the Board of Directors. As mentioned in the announcement of the call to meeting, for the purposes of the provisions of Article 523 and 526 of the Capital Companies Act, it is stated for the record that if the proxy holder is a director of the company, he or she may be in a situation of conflict of interest in relation to items 4, 6, if his or her appointment or ratification or re-election is submitted to the meeting under that item, 8 and 10 of the agenda, and if he is an executive director of the company, also in relation to items 7 and 9 on the agenda, as well as with respect to proposed resolutions other than those formulated by the Board and matters which, although not appearing on the agenda of the meeting, may be submitted to a vote at the general meeting as permitted by law. Both in cases of delegation in favor of the Secretary of the General Meeting and of a member of the Board of Directors, the rules established in the notice convening the General Meeting shall apply, including cases in which the delegation extends to proposed resolutions other than those formulated by the Board of Directors or to matters not included in the agenda. As mandatory, the results of the votes will be recorded in the minutes of the meeting and will be published on the company's website in the manner and within the period established for this purpose in Article 525 of the Capital Companies Act. However, if any shareholders wishes to know the specific result of the vote on any item of the agenda at the meeting itself, he or she may request it, as this information is available in our systems in real time, in which case the specific result of the vote will be read out. The shareholders who have not yet cast their vote and wish to vote against or abstain on any of the items of the agenda proposed by the Board may please approach the voting table at this time and cast their vote. In accordance with Article 197 of the Capital Companies Act, separate votes will be taken on each of the various proposals for ratification, re-election, and appointment of directors contained in item 6 of the agenda. There have been no requests for voting of agreements other than those included in the agenda. Now we will proceed to the vote of proposed resolutions in the agenda. In order not to excessively prolong the duration of the meeting, and given that the full text of the resolutions to be put to the vote has been available to the shareholders from the time of the call to meeting, I will proceed to read out the content of the resolutions in summary form. It is noted for the record that in relation to the 10th point Annual Remuneration Report 2022, the vote will be of a consultative nature, and that the 12th point amendment to the board regulations is of an exclusively informative nature. The following is a summary of the content of the resolutions submitted for the approval of the general meeting. The first item on the agenda is the approval of the annual accounts and individual and consolidated management reports for the financial year 2022. In the second, the consolidated statement of non-financial information for the financial year 2022 is submitted for approval. In the third, the proposal for the application of the result for the financial year 2022 and the consequent distribution of a dividend charged against this result is submitted for approval. In the fourth, the discharge of the Board of Directors for the financial year 2022. In the fifth, the amendment of Article 22 of the Articles of Association to increase the maximum number of the members of the Board of Directors to 16. Now we will vote the proposal to establish in 16 the number of is submitted for approval. This will be indicated in the respective votes. In point 7, two proposals are submitted to a vote. The elimination of the deferral of the delivery of shares of the annual variable remuneration accrued by the executive directors under the provisions of the directors' remuneration policies for the periods 2018-2020 and 2021-23. And second, the updating of the maximum number of shares to be delivered as medium-term incentive 2021-2023 for the assumption of a maximum over-compliance of 150% of all the objectives of this incentive. In the eighth point, the director's remuneration policy for the period 2024, 25, and 26 is submitted for approval and will come into force on the same date. And now we submit the vote of the authorization for the delivery of shares in favor of the executive directors as annual variable remuneration in accordance with the provisions of the remuneration policy 24-26 submitted for approval in the previous item for the purposes of Article 219 of the Capital Companies Act. In point 10, the annual report of directors' remuneration for the financial year 2022 is submitted to the general meeting on a consultative basis. Point 11 empowers the chairman, vice chairman, secretary, and the vice secretary of the board of directors to formalize, register, and execute the resolutions adopted by the general meeting. Lastly, the 12th item on the agenda informs the general meeting of the amendments approved by the Board of Directors and introduced in the Board of Directors regulations since the last extraordinary general meeting. Once the content of the proposal's resolutions have been summarized, after the voting has been completed, we can inform you that each and every one of the proposed resolutions included in the agenda has been approved, with the exception of item 12 on the agenda, which is merely consultative. The individual details of the votes will be published on the company's corporate website at the end of this general meeting. In what concerns point 6 of the agenda on determination of the number of members of Board of Directors, the proposal have been subject to individual as established by Article 197. We confirm the acceptance of the named members of the board. Ratification of Mr. José Vicente de los Mossos Obispos as Executive Director. Mr. de los Mossos, do you accept the charge for which you have appointed and will refrain from engaging in any incompatibility sources? Yes, I do. Appointment of Mrs. María Ángeles Coria Martín as Independent Director. Mrs. Santamaria, do you accept the post to which you have appointed and declare that you're not affected by any of the grounds of foreign compatibility laid down in current legislation for holding the post of Director? Yes, I do. Appointment of Mrs. Elena García Armada as Independent Director. Mr. Garcia, do you accept the post to which you have been appointed and declare that you are not affected by any of the grounds for incompatibility laid down in current legislation for holding the post of councillor? Appointment of Mr. Pablo Jiménez de Parga Maceda as Proprietary Director representing Amber Capital UK and Amber Capital Italy as SGR SPA. Mr. Jiménez de Parga, do you accept the post to which you have been appointed and declare that you're not affected by any of the grounds for incompatibility laid down in current legislation for holding the post of Director? In the view of the results of the votes, we declare all the agreements submitted to this meeting as taken, and the meeting is adjourned. Thank you one more time for your participation.